This is Speak of the Devils on AZ Family Sports.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier TV show for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, we are here in some temporary digs, maybe with a little Wayne's World vibe, a little public access here, but assure our folks this is only temporary. The normal podcast studio here at the station is undergoing some pretty cool upgrades and renovations, but I don't know, maybe after last Saturday's performance, we should have that kind of underground feel.
Maybe we have to be in a cave somewhere. As you mentioned, we're undergoing some renovations here, which are going to be good things, and you hope that Sun Devil football has some renovations of its own in store for the foreseeable future after what was just an embarrassing loss, a historically bad loss in Salt Lake City to Utah, 55-3. My goodness, it's difficult to even say.
Yeah, it is in fact the worst loss since ASU has joined, or worst conference loss since ASU joined the then Pac-8 back in 1978. Historic performances in the bad way all across, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And Kenny Dillingham after the game said that after reflection that we lost this game in March, because I think when you had a chance to kind of digest, get away from the sting of that loss in Salt Lake, that you saw a program in year 0 versus a program in year 19. And both programs this year have battled significant injury issues. But when you have one team that is just at the very forefront, another with maybe the best coach in the conference in Kyle Whittingham, nearly 2 decades in, you saw what the results were.
This season for Sun Devil football and for its fans has brought a lot of haymaker punches and a lot of body blows, but I really wonder if that loss on Saturday is kind of the knockout blow for this season, because as bad as that was, it can realistically get worse before it gets better with these upcoming games. So the highs that were felt just a week ago with that victory over Washington State plummeting back down to earth with that demoralizing loss that happened at Salt Lake.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just, if this is going to be the team that had those 4 or 5 weeks of kind of, being on the doorstep of victory, playing better and better. And then, or is it the team that just, as you mentioned, Joe, kind of coming back down to earth, kind of say that maybe the bill is due after, some of those weeks. And, it doesn't help when third play of the game, your starting quarterback, who in essence is the third string kind of quarterback if you go back to open the year, and Trenton Bourget goes down with an injury. And this was a historically bad offensive showing. ASU gained 83 yards, Joe, the second worst single game performance in program history, the worst since 1946, which is, if you go back, that's a wild year, a lot of bad offense there in terms of shutouts, but just 83 yards, second only to 12 yards gained in that year.
Yeah, I mean, the game of football is slightly advanced and adapted in those near 75, near 80 years since that post-World War II era that you just referred to. So yeah, anytime you're going back to something from the 1940s, which sadly we've said on more than one occasion, whether it was the winning percentage or the win total from last year or what's very likely up ahead for the remainder of this season, we are seeing some very dubious superlatives that ASU is matching now at this point in the year 2023. Again, things that had happened 75, 80 years ago. So it's difficult to really grasp. And like you mentioned, when you lose QB1 at the start of the game, just a few snaps into the ball game, and then it goes not just from that QB1 to QB2, but you go really down farther down the road to get to Jacob Conover. The odds of being successful are very, very low, and that's what we saw. The defensive performance by Utah, I mean, that's something that makes sense. They're a defensive powerhouse. They do that every single year. But the offense heading into that game last week had really been one of the poorer ones that Utah has put together in recent memory. So to drop a double nickel there on ASU, I mean, that was something that's just very, very hard to digest, even still here a few days after the fact.
Yeah, that's the real surprising thing, because we expected the ASU's offense with the patchwork offensive line that has played well recently, but starting left tackle Isaiah Glass did not make the trip to Utah, and then later announced that he's leaving the program. And you're down to your fourth string quarterback. You're even playing running back Cam Scadaboo at quarterback for a while there. You expected those struggles, but the defensive performance from the Sun Devils, that was really shocking to me, Joe. They gave up over 350 yards rushing to Utah. Now, this is a Utah offense that is always, smash mouth in nature, but had struggled recently. They're down to their own backup quarterback, and ASU just signed their defensive coordinator Brian Ward to a 3-year contract extension, a very warranted and well-deserved contract extension for the performance over the first 8 weeks. But man, did not see that coming.
Yeah, we've seen Utah teams that have some highly talented skill players. When running back, the first name you think of is like Zach Moss, those sort of guys that were 1,000-yard ball carriers year in, year out. Though there's talent on this Utah roster in the backfield, you don't have those caliber of players. As we were looking ahead into this game, again, some talent, some guys who've had some 100-yard games here and there, but not those bell cows that can get you that 1,000-yard caliber seasons. But hey, what happened on Saturday, a few running backs for the Utes looked like they're All-America level players. So he had guys that just had performances of the year, maybe performances of their lifetime, and it all came to an head against Arizona State. So at this point, you're trying to figure out how ASU can pick up the pieces, because this matchup that we'll preview up ahead at UCLA has some similarities. A defensive team that has had offensive struggles, but you can't really go into that licking your chops because of what you just saw last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So ASU, as Kenny Dillingham said, was just beat in terms of blocking and tackling. That's what football comes down to. They did neither well in Salt Lake City, but they do have 3 games left, and so there's a chance, because we have seen some improvement over the course of the year. Kenny Dillingham even said after the game, somewhat controversially to some fans, that the team got better despite the loss. So we will see, as Joe mentioned, we'll take a look at this very intriguing final matchup with UCLA here a little bit later on in the show. But after the break, we're going to talk to ASU freshman running back Kyson Brown about how this offense can get back on track after that disastrous performance in Salt Lake City, the life of a student athlete, and so much more. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, in a season in which injuries have been the defining theme for this Sun Devil squad, a lot of young guys have been asked to step up, probably before the coaching staff had intended and hoped for them to do.
And some of the main names in that realm are on the lines. You've got C.J. Fight on the defensive line, Sean Naas specifically on the offensive line, who's blossomed into a starter largely by necessity.
Yeah, he was moved from guard to tackle on the flight to Salt Lake City. And also, after Tuesday's practice, I was able to catch up with another freshman, running back Kyson Brown, who has been a key cog for the Sun Devil offense. So I was able to chat with him about how this offense is feeling after the loss and how they look to get back on track against UCLA. So yeah, it seems like you're always lending a hand any way you can, whether it's on offense or helping the support staff here.
Yeah, man, I was just trying to do my good deeds for the day.
So obviously, kind of a tough afternoon in Salt Lake City. When you guys look back on the tape, what are some of the things kind of jump out about, what led to some of the collective struggles of the offense?
I just feel like injuries. It's a lot of new things that they did that we weren't expecting. So that's a lot of things just tied into, and that was a really good football team. They played sound. Those guys were well prepared, and you can see it.
And what are some of the things that perhaps you were able to, or you employed, or some of the veterans, to try to kind of keep that frustration in check? Just obviously when things aren't working, but just not to get too down.
Yeah, a lot of guys, we're just looking at next game, next great mentality, just working on getting better, being the best version of us that we can be, and just trying to get the next dub.
Looking ahead, what do you feel like the collective mentality is now? With that kind of looking forward, to UCLA. Just overall, it's kind of been a frustrating season. Some ups, some downs, but just a couple weeks ago, you guys had a great showing on offense. What are the keys to kind of getting back to that success?
The guys. We've seen that how good we can be, how good our offense can be, how good our defense can be, like throughout the whole season. So it's just a matter of finding ourselves, and just a matter of coming back to the field, coming back to practice and working, just trying to be better, fixing the mistakes that we make, and just working on being the best version of us that we can be.
About 75% of the way through a freshman season, what's it just the kind of the experience and kind of life as a student athlete been like for you?
I'm just learning. Everything's not going to go your way. Just learning how to adjust, learning new things, learning new plays, just learning new systems. So, as a freshman, I feel like, I've grown a lot from when I first came here. So it's just a matter of just getting better every day.
And of course, being a freshman, acclimating to the football side of things, but also, getting some recognition, on the scholastic side, the Barrett Honors College. What's it been like, just kind of balancing those two worlds? The heavy football load, but also the heavy academic load.
I mean, I had to learn how to juggle those two fast, because being in honors is and being an athlete at the same time, it is kind of workload heavy. So you just got to find that good balance in time, and just really just about just time managing, and then just being more precise with what you do and how you use your time.
What kind of resources are in place with the team to kind of help guys like you, balance everything out, in the classroom and on the field?
The resources I use mostly is my mentor. She helps me organize my work, so I can see how much time a certain assignment may take me, and I can see how much time I have free time. So it's like she's one of the best resources that I have, because she looks out for me. She knows I play football, and she also helps me in a sense of just making sure I'm on top of my work.
You mentioned the Utah facing a great defense last week. Another great defense up ahead. What are the things that jump out about what the Bruins like to do on that side of the ball?
Those guys are long, so we're preparing to pass and do everything, get our guys out of space, and do whatever we need to do to have some explosive plays. But yeah, we noticed that they have a good front seven, so going into the week, we know we're going to have to hold up on the offensive line.
Kyson, this is kind of a big moment for you as a freshman, being able to play in the Rose Bowl for the first time. Does this mean anything a little bit more special, as much as every game's kind of the same for you guys?
Growing up, certain stadiums, and the Rose Bowl, has its history. So, it's going to be surreal playing in the Rose Bowl, but I'm just looking at it as another game, just trying to be the best version of myself I can be.
What has been the response like for you guys? Coach Dillingham said in his Monday presser that you guys are finally starting to get it, finally starting to kind of figure out what the culture wants to be like here. What has been the response like after kind of taking a loss like that at Utah, but also coming back out here on a Tuesday?
We see, from a program like that, how he wants to model this program, and we see what needs to be done and how they responded versus their loss, and we want to do the same thing, respond after a tremendous loss like that. So we just want to imitate the same thing.
What has kind of been the attitude like in terms of you guys just needing to bounce back? I just talked to Coach Aguano, and he said this is another opportunity for you guys to, somewhat upset a team that's been playing really good football the last couple of weeks. But what has been the attitude like for you guys to bounce back as a team as a whole?
As a team as a whole, with the season that we're having, we're just having the attitude of fighting, just being a man, and just, looking up and wanting to keep getting better. What else are you going to do? Nobody expects much. Nobody expects us to do anything. So the only way is up. The only thing we can do is get better. So,
what are kind of the emotions like in a game like that, where things are somewhat getting frustrating? I know people might be wanting more touches, or just maybe when they do get their touches, maybe not getting the yards or somewhat the kind of the big plays that they want. But what has it been like for you as a young player to kind of deal with some of those frustrations?
Yeah, of course it's rough. When you're used to hitting off some runs and used to getting a certain amount of touches. But I look at it through a lens of just, waiting on my turn, being patient, understanding that everything has a process. So I'm not looking at it as more so selfish way, just learning from, other people's mistakes and trying to take that and build on my own game.
So we've talked in the past with you before that you guys went up to Cal. That was your first time in California.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be your second time, but now into LA. Is there somewhat kind of a fun spotlight that you feel? I know we kind of talked about the Rose Bowl already, but for you, first time to LA,
yeah.
Is that fun?
I hear a lot about LA, and you see it in the movies and stuff. So I feel like it's going to be good for me to experience it, and good to see a little more part of the world. But at the end of the day, it's going to be another work day.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, it's time for the Sun Devil Stock Report. I'm going to throw 6 Sun Devil stocks, some key issues here at Joe, and he'll either buy or sell, starting with the collapse of the defense against Utah was the most surprising on-field development so far this season.
I'll buy that. The only other thing that really would contend with that would be the injuries, but that's not a true surprise. It's part of the game. It happens. It stinks when it happens in the waves that it has happened for ASU, but ASU's defense is playing at such a high level. You get a contract extension for defensive coordinator Brian Ward. You think things are rolling the right direction, then you get smacked in the face with a 55-point outing by what was really a subpar offense. That was a bad thing.
All right, number 2, buy or sell. Of all the conference teams to emulate, Kenny Dillingham is correct in choosing Utah as the model.
I'm actually going to sell this, but maybe for different reasons than some might think. I give the analogy of like a 130-pound teenager walking into a gym and seeing a 285-pound jack dude who's been lifting weights for 20 years who can bench press 495 pounds with ease. Like, yeah, that's the goal, but you got to find some intermittent points as well. So I'm going to throw out some. So again, it's legit to admire what Utah's done, but you want to find some programs that have come out of the situations ASU is in, at least when it comes to winning and losing games. The 2 schools that popped to mind are Oregon State, and you might hate me for saying it, but Arizona. These are schools that in the very recent past have had some very, very bad years, and now they're into bowl eligibility. Utah, I looked up the numbers. They haven't won fewer than 5 games in over 20 years. So it's just a little apples and oranges to me.
All right, so buy or sell. Speaking of the Utah Utes, they will not just be the best new addition to the Big 12 Conference coming in 2024, but the overall conference favorite for the season.
I'll buy that because they're such a sustainable team. So even if they lose players, they have the ability and the history of reloading. And you look at the Big 12 this year, of course, they're going to lose Oklahoma, going to lose Texas. You got ASU, Arizona, Colorado, Utah coming over. Oklahoma State is a top 20 team right now. So is Kansas. I mean, you got to admire what they're doing. Arizona is a nationally ranked team right now. What a world we're living in. But Utah is the highest ranked team right now. I know that a lot of these teams are obviously in different conferences now, but there's just too much proof and too much history to show you that Utah should be the top ranked team and the highest expected team when it comes to the Big 12 next year. TCU last year, national runner-up, but they've really fallen off. It seems like that is not a sustainable thing for them. So when you put all the pieces together in terms of what's being done right now and what's been done historically and how the program has been able to retool and stay at a very high level, Utah deserves that nod until it's proven otherwise against them.
Buy or sell. Now, setting aside any best tags, running back Cam Scadaboo is just the most fun Sun Devil to watch play in the last 5 years.
It's tough. I'm going to kind of sell it, but he's like on that short list. He's on that Mount Rushmore. If you're talking about the last 5 seasons, that's obviously going to bring guys like Eno Benjamin, Brandon Ayuk, Rashad White, depending on how far, if the fifth, if this is the 5th year, N'Keal Harry might be in that mix. So it's hard to put him as the number 1, but he's like on that Mount Rushmore. So I'm selling, but really not by a lot.
All right, buy or sell. And speaking of those Wildcats, Jed Fish is the clubhouse leader right now for Pac-12 Coach of the Year.
I'll buy that. It has to be. What they've done, especially in the last few weeks, to get their record to 6-3, when they're at a time where it looked like bowl eligibility might be something they may attain if they were to beat ASU in the Territorial Cup game. They are doing some things and playing defense, changing out some of their personnel, especially at quarterback. So what he's done is quite remarkable. And you have a lot of other teams in the conference that are kind of doing what they should be doing, like a Washington or an Oregon, ones that are slightly or to high degrees underperforming, like a USC. So between what they're doing and what others are or aren't doing, right now it's an easy choice. Got to buy that.
And finally, buy or sell. Beating the Arizona Wildcats is now the most critical thing ASU has to do heading into the offseason.
I'll buy that, focusing primarily on the field so you can get some momentum. But when you're talking about the things that need to be done off the field heading into and in the offseason, I think you need to make a change at offensive coordinator. You need to really try to strike some gold somehow, some way when it comes to NIL. A big part of that is going to be at the top in the administration. We all know that that sort of thing is forthcoming. That needs to happen this offseason to get things going in the appropriate direction so you can get some fan involvement, some enthusiasm, excitement, and those dollar bills coming in for NIL money. But heading into the offseason, that win over U of A would be the biggest thing.
After the break, we're going to preview ASU's road trip to face UCLA.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. ASU prepares for what is its final foreseeable trip to the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. A few bullet points on the Bruins. They're, of course, guided by Chip Kelly. He made a big name for himself at Oregon and in the NFL. This is his 6th season at UCLA after some really early struggles. It looked like for a while there that he might not make it at UCLA, has turned things around in a positive direction. 17 combined wins over the 2021 and 22 seasons. They're 6-3 right now, so they'll be going to a bowl game. Like a few other Pac-12 teams, they started off hot, got inside the top 20 at an early part in the season, but they've hit a little bit of some stumbling blocks recently. That said, at 8 or even 9 win regular season is still a possibility for the Bruins. After this week, they, of course, have ASU this weekend, and then they play USC and Cal. They should be able to take at least 2 of those 3 games. Quarterback health issues are a definite item to keep an eye on, so we'll see how their offense operates this weekend. But they have an elite defense. They rank 2nd nationally in run defense and team sacks, 3rd in TFLs, 13th in total defense. They've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown through 9 games, so similar storylines to last week.
Yeah, it's going to be quite I think a slugfest, maybe an ugly battle, maybe the type of game that we thought we were going to get a week ago with a team that's also facing its significant questions at the quarterback health position. Both Ethan Garbers and Dante Moore left last week, and the offensive line is having its own issues. So, talking about that, jumping into our keys of the game. Number 1 for ASU, keep whoever is playing quarterback for the Sun Devils upright, because as Joe mentioned, that pass rush is elite. Kenny Dillingham has been effusive in his praise of the Bruins front, calling it the best he's faced in his 2 years back in the Pac-12. They get after the quarterback maybe better than anybody in the country, and with ASU's issues on offensive line, whoever's back there at quarterback is going to be in for a potentially long night.
Maybe easier said than done, but you got to keep those QBs upright, not just to keep them off the sidelines and not to keep them away from being injured, but so they can have the time to go through the progressions and operate this offense. The UCLA defense brings it from a lot of different angles. They've got some superstar edge rushers, so it is going to be a major, major challenge for the Arizona State offense.
Key number 2, kind of flipping the script a little bit, exploit the Bruins' issues on the offensive line. Now, those 2 quarterbacks got injured last week against U of A because UCLA's pass protection has been pretty poor, especially as of late. ASU's pass rush did have some struggles last week against Utah, but overall, the course of the season has been pretty good. Prince Dorbaugh looks like he might not be able to play this week, but you still have Clayton Smith and BJ Green, one of the best in the conference, coming after it. Brian Ward, probably a little humbled after last week's performance, might dial up some creative chaos to bring at the Bruins.
Yeah, you want to see them get weird, get wild in this game. Utah's got a very good offensive line. UCLA, not so much. I think you need to see the defense just go for broke and play that kind of Todd Graham style of football where you're blitzing all the time. You're trying to make some havoc happen because ASU is in a little bit of desperation mode. So you got to try to make things happen. A big part of that, you got to force turnovers. Game like this with your offense really struggling, you got to win that turnover battle by multiple turnovers.
And key number 3, now obviously coming off a 52-point loss, the ego and the confidence may have taken a hit. ASU cannot afford that hangover effect. Play with confidence and hit UCLA early. They're notorious slow starters. They've been scoreless in 5 of the 6 games that they've had in conference play. So if ASU can show that they can shake off last week's debacle and just get out there in the Rose Bowl and hit them early, they might be in for a pretty successful evening.
We've seen a lot of moral victories, and you get to a moral victory by competing with good teams. ASU has proven to do that with a few exceptions this season. Obviously, last week was the biggest exception. Got to get back on track to be able to compete with some of the bigger dogs in the conference.
All right, time for our game predictions. I'll start things off. I think that ASU is going to continue to have some offensive issues because that defense is really good. On the flip side, I do think ASU's defense will be better against a UCLA offense looking to rebound off of a loss. I just don't think it's going to be enough on the road. I think ASU is going to have to settle for probably some field goals there, while the Bruins kind of pull away late with their greater depth. 26-16 Bruins.
Similar story here. I'm picking a 24-10 UCLA victory.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. But make sure to download our full podcast episode for more interviews and much greater insight as we break down what happened last week and this week's matchup as well. And Joe and I will be back next week as we preview a kind of interesting battle as the nationally ranked Oregon Ducks come to Tempe to face the Sun Devils.